Okay, very good. Yeah. So again, thank you very much, Dr. Yahya. My privilege to be participating in this session. To start with, I need to tell you that I don't have any experience in homeopathy, and I'm not a doctor. So if I say something which is wrong based on your homeopathic philosophies and things like that, please forgive me. I just joined because my very dear classmate, Dr. Yahya, asked me to conduct a session. I primarily work in strategy consulting, not from the medical side, but we do work with Ministry of Health in the Middle East, in Saudi Arabia. We are helping with the transformation of the healthcare sector in multiple countries. So we mostly come in from a strategic perspective, economic perspective, viability perspective versus a doctor technical expertise on this topic, right? And I also wanted to have it more like a Q&A session, but Dr. Yahya insisted that I need to speak for 10 to 15 minutes before we can get into a discussion. So I have prepared some material, just like any other consultant. I have prepared some slides and I will quickly go through that, but my interest will be to spend some time answering any questions you may have more from a business perspective and a regulatory perspective versus more from a technical perspective. Yeah, is that fine, Dr. Yahya? Any quick comments before I get into the presentation?
Yes, you can proceed. So we most welcome.
Okay, thank you very much. Yeah. So today, what I would like to do is I will try to concentrate on just 4 ideas, very simple 4 ideas. I just wanted to convey. It may sound very simple, but it is, in my view, it is very, very fundamental. Let me run through the 4 ideas and share some inputs on that, and then we can get into a discussion. The first input is, I would just, maybe all of you are 100% aware that the life expectancy has doubled in the last 50 years, right? And the cost of healthcare cannot be accommodated or managed with the current philosophy that is being followed, right? Today, if you, I'm making some very fundamental statements here. I know it is a very capitalistic Western thinking has commercialized healthcare. It is very, very obvious, and it is even becoming very unethical. I know it's a very strong word. It is becoming very unethical, and this is based on some of the studies that we have done across multiple geographies, looking at how the healthcare of a population is being taken care. It is completely capitalistic. It is genuinely not addressing the fundamental issue of healthcare. And even the handling of COVID, in my view, is a very, very good example of how the whole healthcare has been commercialized, right? Everybody is handling COVID just to make money. And I don't think anybody is being transparent on the situation and the treatments that are being provided and the way it is being handled is, in my view, it is to make money versus resolving the issue, right? Number one. Number two, today we do have a patient-centric, it's a provider-centric curative healthcare, which is, everything is centered around the hospital or where you're visiting, and it is curing a disease today, which should be more a patient-centric, and it should be preventive healthcare, right? So it is not that everybody should go to the hospital. The hospital should come to the patient, and you should prevent from prevent the disease instead of curing once the disease has come, right? Then only you can have a healthy, a longer and easier life, right? Again, a very simple statement, right? And with also, if you look at a hospital-centric curative healthcare philosophy, it is very much aligned with the Western medical philosophy versus a patient-centric preventive healthcare, which is more aligned with an Ayurvedic or homeopathic traditional medicine philosophy. Yeah, and this will significantly reduce the cost and make it very affordable, right? And the last point I wanted to make it is that unless some fundamental changes are made in which how traditional medicine is being handled, like Ayurveda or homeopathy, you will not get investments and you will not get an insurance coverage. And you may understand, you may think why it is very important. If you look at what is happening for any sector, I'm not talking about healthcare anymore. I'm just for any healthcare to develop in a capitalist setup, you need to have investments. You need to have insurance coverage. Somebody has to cover it. And unless you make some fundamental changes, these things will not happen in a traditional medicine. And that is why the Western medicine is picking up significantly. even though it is nowhere comparable to the benefits and the way the healthcare population of the population has to be taken care, right? So I will just give some little more details along these 4 points, and then we can get into a discussion. To start with, again, very clearly shown in this graph, around the population is doubling. It's almost doubled in the last 50 years. The life expectancy, it used to be 32 years at independence, and now it is 65 years. But what does it mean? It actually means that the cost of healthcare has gone up tremendously versus what it used to be in the past. And just to give you some little more detailed specifications, you may think that the healthcare is very well taken care in very developed economies like US and Europe, and that is not the case. Actually, in US and Europe, even though the GDP is extremely high, 12 to 14% of the GDP is spent on healthcare in US and Europe versus countries like Japan and Singapore, where the healthcare expenditure is 10% or 4%, which is on a per capita basis. When you move towards the Eastern countries like Japan or Singapore or China, the cost of healthcare is less than half of what is happening in developed countries like US, Europe, and UK. And that is because they follow the capitalistic, unethical money-making philosophy versus preventive care, traditional methodologies that are followed in countries like Japan, Korea, and Singapore. I'm not bringing in India because India, the issues are very different because it's not a developed economy. Our expenditure on healthcare is only 2 to 3%. So that is not a benchmark because we are in that area. We are a poor country in healthcare, right? Even though we are developing in economy. So I don't want to mix philosophies. I'm just talking about developed economies like US, Europe, Japan, and Singapore. And all of them are equally healthy or unhealthy, whichever way you look at it. And countries like Japan and Singapore or China, who are following a traditional methodology much more than the Western unethical methodology, are able to maintain a more healthier population by spending less than half of what US and Europe is spending. This is actual data, right? This is really actual data, right? Similarly, if you look at the rates of diabetics, all these diseases that are increasing is in developed economies where the healthcare expenditure is extremely high versus economies which are following traditional methodologies are actually much more healthier and spending much lesser money. You see, the point I'm trying to make is that it is a very corrupt setup that is spoiling the whole healthcare system, and it is moving towards something that is not sustainable, and it is creating a very unhealthy population against the fundamentals of healthcare, right? And if we continue like this, in another 10 years time, we will have around 12 to 15 of the world's population will be aged around 65. 60% of the world population will be obese or overweight, and countries will have to spend around 8 to 10% of GDP on healthcare, if not more than that, right? What I'm trying to say is that you definitely will need some fundamental changes in how healthcare is managed. And by the way, this is something that we are trying to push in some of the countries that we are doing work, for example, in the Middle East and in Dubai, in Saudi Arabia and Qatar, Oman, where we are heavily involved. We are trying to move the whole philosophy from what is happening today, where you are treating patients versus trying to take care of the healthcare of the citizens. So if you remember in the first slide, what I was trying to say is what is happening today is what you see on the left-hand side, which is very much hospital-based, invasive, episode-based, curative. It's all in the hospital trying to make money versus trying to take care of the citizens, right? Health of the citizens, you should go to the patient, it should be decentralized, it should be community, should be trying to take care of the citizens versus the whole community moving towards the hospital, and it should be less invasive and a treatment, right? And also today, if you look at what we are proposing, when you're trying to take care of the health of the citizen, or we are trying to have preventive cure, it is not covered by insurance, which is really, really ridiculous, right? When you need to fall ill, or instead of that, you can take a homeopathic medicine, or you can have an Ayurvedic treatment so that you don't fall ill, and that is not covered by the health insurance, that is not funded. So the whole system expects you to fall ill and then go to the hospital, and then it is covered by insurance. So So what logic is this? This is really not okay, right? So just to give you some examples like Japan and Singapore, which I think is more following a traditional philosophy versus US and Europe, you can see that in Japan, in spite of people working extremely hard, it is the most workaholic people. But if you see how they have food, it is the most relaxed manner of having food. They always concentrate, they always respect. It is like food is like a medicine. It is again going the traditional methodology of healthy living so that you don't get diseases. People live the most healthy and the healthiest in the world is in Japan. The longest life is in Japan, and they don't follow the Western medicine philosophy at all in countries like Japan or Korea, for example. I don't know whether you're aware in Singapore. I was actually, I did a lot of work in Singapore. If you look at the Singapore Economic Development Plan, they did not have any investments towards healthcare. And this is very, very surprising. I think people may be extremely surprised to say, how come healthcare is not addressed? The philosophy that Lee Kuan Yew followed is, if people are given education, if there is a house, if people have good jobs and there is sanitation, you don't have to take care of health. People will be automatically healthy. And this is really what happened in Singapore. The first 5-year plan and the second 5-year plan did not have healthcare investments. They said, forget about healthcare. Let us educate people. Let us train people. Let us give them houses. They had a huge housing program. Let us ensure that they have jobs. So they earn, they are educated, they live in a very healthy situation. Sanitation is taken care, and we don't have to worry about healthcare. That is the philosophy that Singapore followed. And now in the third and the fourth year plan, they started bringing healthcare, because then the country was developed, the fundamental issues were taken care and all of that, right? So we have to really move away from a Western medical philosophy to the traditional philosophy. The Western medical philosophy is very new. It is just 1 century old versus the traditional philosophy, which was, I don't know, 10 centuries or 15 or 20 or 30 centuries old. You know much more than me, but this is something that is new, which is created by the corrupt world versus what used to be happening in a traditional fashion, right? And if you look at most of the Asian countries, now they're trying to push back into traditional medicine. I don't want to get into details. You may know all of this. I can get into details if required. Another very interesting observation is Harvard Medical School and many of developed economies and the medical colleges are now trying to integrate Western medicine and traditional medicine. It is not a competition between Western medicine and traditional medicine. It is combining both of them, and that is creating the best healthcare system, which is not followed in many countries. There is a competition between traditional medicine and Western medicine, and you're trying to move everything towards the Western medicine versus trying to combine it, integrate it to bring the best of both systems, right? Which is happening in most of the developed economies over a period of time. They realize that if you follow the invasive curative philosophy, you will not be able to accommodate the cost. The people will be unhealthy, and hence the Western style of medical treatment is very, very unviable. And they wanted to mix both of them, and hopefully over a period of time they will move towards a more traditional medicine, right? Now, it may be something very simple. Why is it that the Western medicine, again, I'm going to say things that is very, very simple, and it is known to all of you, but that is why the traditional medicine is not picking up, because the traditional medicine is not based on measurable clinical evidence. It is, I know I'm a little bit stretching the point. It is not completely true what I'm saying, but it is more based on trust, right? You trust somebody. It is more an apprenticeship. You're listening to people. It is being trusted. It is not evidence based. But the Western medicine is more measurable. There is clinical evidence. There is a large repository of knowledge. And that is where, when you can clinically prove it with measurements, then only funding is available, insurance is available, you can invest a lot and develop the whole thing. So it may sound very simple, but if it is, you don't handle traditional medicine with much more research and development and documentation of the treatment. The documentation is extremely poor, as I understood when we were trying to study the traditional medicines that is happening in China, we looked at a lot of things in the Middle East. It is not documented as systematically. The knowledge database is not vastly available. There is no clinical evidence, measurable, repetitive clinical evidence is not there. And hence it is treated like a very old system. And that is why it is not happening. And by this, you will not get funding and you will not get insurance coverage, right? So what we need to understand is it is more belief based. All the traditional medicines was more based on God fearing population, right? We trust something, they trust in Almighty. There's something beyond our own capacity. We pray, we listen to God. It is based on trust. It is based on apprenticeship. And that was the right way to take care of your living and health and food. But unfortunately, the Western system, which is not based on trust, it is not based on any belief, it is not based on like there is a higher something up there which you need to believe. No, I need evidence for everything. It has to be clinically proven, it has to be documented, it has to be validated, it has to be proven in a lab. Then only funding is available, then only you can be insured. Unfortunately, that is the philosophy that we are following today. And unless the traditional traditional treatment goes into that philosophy, you will always be left behind, unfortunately. That is, it's a simple philosophy, and that's why we are trying to change in many of the economies that we are trying to help, right? I leave it at that. I can get into much more details. I do have another 100 slides behind this. I'm just skipping through that, but I don't want to bore you with presenting all those slides. I'm happy to get into a discussion around the topics that we discussed now, in which we are making a statement that you may have to make some fundamental changes in traditional medicine, in homeopathic treatments for you to be able to compete with the Western unethical philosophy that is being followed today. I stop now and wait for to initiate the discussion.
Okay, thank you, Thomas. So I welcome our participants to ask questions so that we can have a discussion. So I hope the understanding of Mr. Thomas Furivala about the health industry, it is very evident. So as our homeopathic philosophy, he mentions the facts. So anyway, it is then easy to convince the efficacy of homeopathy to the world. So let us have some discussion. Please raise your hands so that we can welcome. I think Dr. Jose, Sridhar Kurup, yes. Come on, you can start. Dr. Sridhar Kurup, you can initiate the discussion. Unmute Dr. Sridhar Kurup. Eldo, please unmute. Kurup sir, please unmute yourself.
I don't think the participants are able to unmute. I think the organizer may have to unmute them.
Eldo, please. Eldo, please unmute Sridhar Kurup.
Yeah, yes. Are you able to hear?
Yes,
yes, sir.
Yes. My question is, see, in homeopathy also, we are doing evidence-based. That means blood report, that the all investigations we are doing. And even research also nowadays, double-blind methods we are doing. But the government is not approved the insurance people. That is the only problem. Otherwise, evidence-based nowadays it is doing.
See see, I'm not okay. See, many of the statements that I made, I'm stretching it a bit more than reality. It is not that it is not evidence-based, but the quantity of evidence available or the documentation of the methodology that you're following and the validation is lacking. I'm not saying it is not purely not evidence-based. It is evidence-based. But if you look, if you look at the research knowledge captured and documented and disseminated, and the volume of evidence that is available is not at par, and that is not given equal importance. See, I'm again, let me explain to you what I was trying to say. Today, even today, when you, I know I'm making a very drastic philosophical statement. When I personally try to talk to a homeopathic doctor or an Ayurvedic doctor or a Western medicine doctor, the expectation of me to trust them versus asking them questions is very evident to me. It is very evident. I can tell you whether you agree or not. It's a fact. You see where I'm coming from. It is more about the philosophy of trust basis philosophy. It is an old system.
So Dr. Gupta, please unmute yourself. Dr. Gupta.
Yeah.
Yes, please continue.
Yes. So see, again, I did not want to make, if somebody is not speaking, can you mute yourself, please? Yeah. See, the right way to look at it, see, even I will tell you the contradiction of the discussions that we are having here. The contradiction of the discussions is that we are trying to say, how can we have the traditional medicine more commercialized, which is fundamentally against the philosophy of traditional medicine. I hope you're understanding the contradiction itself in the discussion we are having. Healthcare and education fundamentally should not be commercialized. If you go to the history of these two sectors, and in India and in the olden age where education was amazing and healthcare was amazing, it was never commercialized. And today we are trying to say that unless you have Ayurvedic and homeopathic treatment more commercialized, you will not be able to get funding. I hope you're realizing the contradiction in what we are trying to say. We are trying to say Western medicine is commercialized, it is unethical, and hence they are getting a lot of funding. And now what do we have to correct in traditional medicine? We may have to start thinking like how commercialized they are, right? So it is a very, very fine balance that we're trying to discuss here, in my view, right? Yeah. Same thing happened in education. The moment you try to commercialize it, the value goes down, right? The best Harvard Business School, for example, people think it is a commercially viable entity. No, Harvard Business School, MIT are the highest loss-making entities. The return on investment is the lowest in the Harvard Business School. It is running by endowment fund. People are funding it, and that is why a Harvard Medical College or a Harvard Business School is running. It is the most financially unviable institute in the whole world. I repeat, Harvard Business School, Harvard Medical College, Harvard Medical Hospitals are financially very, very unviable. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Dr. Manoj, you can add.
Thank
Dr.
you.
Manoj.
So now I'd like Ajmal Bashir to talk.
Ajmal, yes.
Good evening.
Hello.
Good evening, sir.
Yes.
Sir, I'm actually a student from IFPH backend.
Yes.
Sir, I had a question, sir. Like,
please go ahead.
Sir, I just heard in some of videos from Sajeev Nair, sir, that personalization and digitalization is more preferred in healthcare right now. So, sir, do you think that we can bring this to homeopathy? And in most cases, genome analysis and predicting the diseases are also happening now. So, can we try out something like this in homeopathy, or can we prevent some of the diseases using the system of homeopathy by predicting the occurrence of a disease from the genome analysis? Like I have found this in one of the company like Ware Roots, which is run by Sajeev Nair sir now. So I just thought like, what if it was possible here in homeopathy? Can you please explain the scope of this, sir?
Good, I can. See, first of all, I'm not a homeopathic expert, so let me not get into the fundamentals of homeopathic because I'm not from that background. But let me touch on a fundamental point that you started by saying, personalization and digitalization. There is no way for any sector anywhere in the world without getting into personalization and digitalization. It is not only related to homeopathy or allopathy or anything. Everything has to embrace digitalization and personalization. And I can give you some very simple examples of, I don't know whether we want to get into a much wider discussion. You can pick up any sector, any industry in the world. I can prove it to you that 30 to 40% of the cost will reduce. I can prove it to you. Even in homeopathy and allopathy and medical. Let me just give you one or two examples, which is very, very close to your heart before I come to the healthcare. Today you have Ola, for example, right? In India, you have Ola or Uber and Careem. Just to give you one example, the moment you digitalized it, before you had Uber or Careem or Ola, 40 to 50% of the taxis were vacant. It was looking for passenger, right? Now 90% of the taxis are occupied, which means you need 30% less taxis to accommodate the same requirement. Okay, I'll come to healthcare. If you take restaurants, before digitalization, before you started ordering food from home, the amount of food a restaurant can produce and sell versus when you're ordering from home, it is double or 3 times now. Why? Because half of the food produced in the hotel is eaten at home. So the same capacity in the hospital is able to sell 3 times the food. Now let me come to a hospital. We actually did a study for one of the largest hospital chains in the Middle East during COVID situation. By digitalizing and the patient entering all the data from home, validating it, it reaches the doctor's table before the patient reaches there, reduces the time the patient spends in the hospital by 30 to 40%. You don't have to go to the reception. You don't have to wait in the queue. You don't even need a reception. You can actually go to the hotel, to the doctor, and instead of spending 2 hours in the hospital, you can spend only 30 minutes. 1.5 hours time is eliminated, number one. On top of that, the accuracy of the data has increased tremendously because you are entering it yourself versus you telling the nurse to enter, and nurse will make some mistakes. There's some spelling error. Your name is not spelled correctly. Many numbers are. The accuracy has increased tremendously. Now, let me get into a slightly more controversial statement. 30% of the treatments were not even required. During COVID period, people did not go to the hospital because they could not move. And 30% of the diseases got cured automatically. People did not go to the hospital to start with. So look at, because of digitalization, you started talking to the doctor over the phone, or you did not visit the doctor, or when you go to the hospital, you spend 1/3 or 1/4 of the time that was originally spent in the hospital. Simple concept of digitalization and personalization, right? And once you are digitalizing and documenting it, the evidence available to the doctor is much more than what you had in the past. You see, so every sector has to have personalization and digitalization. The cost and the investments will reduce by 30 to 40%, which means that you can provide much more healthcare for the same cost, or the cost to the patient will be much lower. So there's no doubt in my mind whether you need to embrace personalization or digitalization, in my view. Now, to talk about genome and all of that, I'm really sorry. I'm not in I don't have the capability to answer that deep questions on this topic, by the way.